Hi guys, initially I didn't want to make a video about this, but now Sargon is in the mix too. After all the YouTube feed I got, it's just getting annoying now. So I just really want to set the record straight about this whole thing. Newsflash, people, women have worked throughout all of human history. All of human history, okay? Stop with this lie, stop with this myth that women didn't start joining the workforce until post second wave feminism. That's just not true. It never was true and it never will be true. Okay, now I'm not advocating for women to work as hard as men or for women to just go into all these like male fields or anything like that. I mean, I was brought up in a household like one because, like I said, my mother is still even close to retirement. She's 60 something now. She's pretty close to retirement. She's a software engineer and my father is a hardware engineer. They're both engineers. And I was brought up in a family where all of the women, well, except for one, and I'll get to her in a minute, all of the women worked. My mother's older sister is a doctor. I think she's still working. I think she hasn't retired. Maybe she recently did. I don't remember. And my father's older sister is an architect, and I think she's still currently working, or maybe she's just recently retired. I can't keep these things straight. The only woman that I know in my family who didn't work is this bitch, evil woman, the wife of my uncle, my mother's older brother, who basically slowly killed off my uncle by not taking care of him because she's so spoiled, entitled, very status driven. So as you can kind of see, like, obviously a lot of this is kind of biased, but still, I just kind of want to give my perspective things, and I also do have some facts to back this up. So basically, I think the issue I have is that now it's not that people are saying being a housewife is just okay. There are so many people are falling for this lie perpetuated by feminists, but they don't realize this, that it's in the nature of women to not work and to just be a housewife, taking care of the house and taking care of the children. Again, that's just not true, okay? We are from a hunter-gatherer society, and in fact, even if you look at animals, both male and female animals, they work, quote unquote. They go and they bring food to their children. For example, lions, they hunt. Even our close ancestors, both sex animals, they do go and they actively have to find food, find resources. What it used to be is just that we started off a hunter-gatherer society where the men would go and take more risk. So they would work further away from home. They do the job that are much more risky, much more dangerous, right? And the women do the jobs that are more gathering, like she has to gather firewood for the winter. She has to, if she can pick fruit, she'll pick fruit instead of going hunting. And so she stays closer to home for her work. But it doesn't mean that she's just there working. She's there being a housewife, basically. It doesn't mean that. She's actually there working, and in today's traditional society, this is still the same. I mean, if you go look at China, for example, a very traditional society, where I think now there's a stat I just looked at where the gap between the female force and the male force is really just something like 10%. So 62% of the women working, whereas 70% of men working. So yeah, I would never deny that definitely men worked more, for sure, than women on average. But again, like, it's never the case that most women just sort of stayed at home and most men work. And in fact, in such a society, so we're seeing like in the Muslim countries where you have a much fewer percentage of women who are working relative to men. And again, it's not zero. Like, they go from something like 10% to 30% of women. There are still a pretty significant percentage of women who are working, and they kind of use it as a religion to like keep them down, sort of. what this is not good for men, okay? It really isn't. Like, again, I'm here asking from kind of an MRA perspective, not from a woman's perspective predominantly. This is not good for men because what ends up happening is that the family are going to start desiring more and more for male children, okay? And this is actually what you see in all of these Muslim societies. You see like a gender imbalance. And especially like the more extreme Muslim society, the more extreme case where women were basically made to stay at home, the more the case that both men and women start wanting male children, and they pressure the woman to have a male child. And this is because, I mean, it's very obvious. It's because when men work, they're the ones bringing in money, and people want to get rich. Okay, I mean, people want as much money as possible into the household. This is true for both men and women. And what end up happening is that you have like women actively trying to abort female babies, and also men would not marry a woman who only have like daughters, or he would divorce her, try to get another woman, get sons. This is kind of the result, and as a result of that, men start to become more and more disposable. And I think this really is partially the reason for why you see so many young men, of working age flourishing into rich countries like Europe. They're disposable. I mean, they don't bring wife or children with them, even though they could make more of a case for refugee status, right? I mean, these are all like migrants. They're kind of like fake refugees. They're using this situation to get into Europe, but they're all like working age young men because they're pressured by their society to bring money back. I mean, people think of it as an invasion, and I'm not going to say it's not an invasion. It's more complicated, but much of it is really regarding these men having a lot of pressure to bring money back to their family, to make themselves useful because they're disposable. Okay, when you have this situation, men become more disposable. So, one of the things is that basically we had this thing in the West where the boomer generation, this post-World War II generation, where the West got so rich, they were so technologically advanced, and they got so rich from all the wealth accumulated from imperialist eras in the 19th century. And also, again, like, I'm not saying like all of the wealth are from imperialism. I'm just saying it's kind of a combination of imperialism and their technology advancement. I mean, they kind of go together. You want to go conquer countries more further away and more difficult, and you develop technology and so on and so forth. There's a competition going on. But anyways, eventually the West got really, really wealthy, okay? So wealthy that it created sort of a middle class where it's no longer the case that both men and women, both husband and wife, have to work in order to sustain the family. This is kind of what happened post-World War II especially. And a lot of people think about like how great that era was. I mean, there are a lot of other factors they're not considering. For example, a lot of the men died. I mean, sometimes it's up to like 60% of the men died in World War II, right? And whoever's left, I mean, they have their own pick of women. So it's great for those men. They get to pick the best women because there's just a kind of a shortage of men. But at the same time, that also means that there's a demand for a woman to join the workforce. And due to the technological advancements, what happened was there's so many kind of jobs that are low risk that women start to want because they're high paid jobs, but they're low risk. So it wasn't like before where there's much higher correlation between what you get paid for and the amount of risk. So men get paid much more, but they tend to go into very physically risky jobs, like have a high risk of death, basically. Now you have all these office jobs that are low risk that women can also do, and they start to pouring into these industries, right? And then they start to become kind of yes, they were kind of discriminated. I mean, men were also discriminated, but there wasn't gender issue because there were certain kind of jobs, certain kind of office jobs that's not like society as a whole, they don't want women to have, or they're kind of They kind of look down upon women to have because they're kind of masculine. And again, it's kind of a side effect of a lot of things. For example, the biggest one being that women not being in government, but traditionally, people in government, they have to prove themselves by having a record of military service. Traditionally, that's the case, and women don't have military service obligations, so they shouldn't be involved in government, right? Things like that. But there are other jobs like professorships and things like that that don't require these things, but there was still a little bit of discrimination going on. But what I'm saying is that I definitely don't think we needed feminism for that. I think it was beginning to solve itself. People already start to see the absurdness of it. Even without feminism, this would have all been solved, and probably with a much better result. So again, it's not that feminists are wrong about everything. This is what I've been trying to say for a long time, but they just use completely wrong method, and that's why we're in this mess right now. So again, all of that is solved, but the point is, right now, there's so many articles regarding from the feminist side regarding why are women unhappy? Oh, they have to juggle this, that. No, people in the West, in general, are less happy than the previous generation, and this is because as living standards get higher and higher, people start to aspire for higher. Happiness is relative. I know that there are people in the comment section on the Sargon video pointed out, yes, happiness is relative. When you're having it so much better, you start to want, so even better things. And this all coincided with a lot of propaganda. I mean, we have all these chick flicks, we have all these romantic movies regarding the perfect life. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, before people didn't have movies. I mean, just imagine what kind of society that was, right? I mean, people just work at their daily life stuff, but now you have like this movie industry that actively tried to paint a picture of that perfect life, which is like maybe less than 1% of people can really have, okay? Because marriage traditionally was not about falling in love. It was about a business contract. It was about both men and women working together to raise the child. And I mean, their love or whatever, that's kind of secondary. I mean, it's about compatibility. That was what it was for a long time. Now, I mean, I know most people think that was so great, but again, like, I'm from a traditional society. I mean, it's not great. I mean, there are upsides and downsides. The upside is, yes, I mean, the society, the culture, have people who actively work together to raise a family. That's great, but at the same time, I mean, people don't really love each other by the Western standard, okay? People don't hold attraction to be that important. People hold other things to be important, like for men is social status and money, right? And for women is like how good she is at being a housewife, take care of children, and even now even how well like her education background is. Those things are also getting picked now too. So you're not really thinking about finding a soulmate. I mean, everybody wants that, but you have a culture, traditional culture is that's really secondary. That's just your fantasy. That's your dream. It's like wanting to ride on a unicorn, and flying off over the rainbow. It's like, no, you're not gonna be able to get that. You just have to be content with these things. And again, in my opinion, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think it's I tend to agree with Goethe's Faust. I mean, desire is what drives human beings. I mean, we suffer from desire, right? I mean, the Buddhist religion wants us to get rid of desire, but I think that's becoming anti-human. Desire is what makes a human being. And yes, we suffer. So what? That's part of life. You desire things, you suffer, but because you desire things, you constantly improve yourself. It's because of desire of humanity that we have improved our society. Without desire, if we just all content like a traditionalist family, our society wouldn't have improved. I mean, none of you guys want to go live in China, in like the rural area of China, or even like in Eastern Europe, in these poor countries where the society, yeah, it's much more traditionalist and much more family oriented, but you know how much that would suck, okay? Like the life would be bleak. You were made to want simpler things, and that's what happens in previous generations in the last century and the centuries before in the West too. So again, like you always have to take the good with the bad. Okay, it's never like stop with this nostalgia and move forward. Okay, I mean think about it in a much wiser perspective instead of like the grass is always greener on the other side. Because I never look at anything like that. I mean there are certainly things, there are decades that things were much better, but it's only a few decades. I mean, we're gonna live through that, but there's always going to be downsides in every generation, okay, in every kind of society, and 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 I just want to, and also another thing that I want to mention is that right now, like it kind of blows my mind that people somehow think it's like by default an honorable thing for women to become a housewife, which, like I said, it never was the case. Okay, I mean that was the status of aristocracy for a very long time, where women just need to take care of children. Actually, she doesn't even need to do that because a lot of time that's taken care of by wet nurses. Wet nurses are women employees, by the way. Okay, so so yeah, even aristocratic women had jobs sometimes as wet nurses, as governesses, as lady in waitings to royalty or higher aristocratic women than they are. I mean, yeah, even they had jobs. But these women are like, eventually the peasant revolted on them. They spit on their image. They hated them. In France, they cut off their head, right? I mean, because like these are like the stereotypical fat lazy woman who didn't do anything except just raising children. It never was the case that it's just by default honorable. Now I'm not saying like being a wife wouldn't be honorable. I'm just saying like it's a privileged position. It's very privileged, and you didn't earn that position. Okay, and you have to go and make the best out of it. You have to become a better person, or at least strive to be a better person than before if you're in that position. Just like if somebody just handed $1 million to you, you didn't deserve it, right? But of course you could still put that in very good use. This is the same with being a housewife. Like if you're really a good mother, if you actively make your husband happy, and I think at that point you should. I mean, it shouldn't be your happiness anymore. He's paying you, okay? Like he's your employer by default, basically. So you definitely need to make him happy. And do all of that and just be like a really good partner. That's great. All the glory to you, okay? But again, like you have to understand, like you have to check your privilege. I mean, the SJWs, they're not wrong. The privileged people need to check their privilege. They're just wrong on who's the privileged ones. And being handed something, okay, without having to work for it, by default, that's privilege. I mean, if there's a definition of privilege, that's it. If you inherited money, you're privileged. If you inherit a lot of money, you're privileged. If you are just giving money after you're married, you're privileged, okay? I mean, and yeah, the society would have expectation off of you to use that privilege to good use, but it's privilege because like it's free, basically. I mean, you're handed something without even having to earn it. Now you're handed something, and then you're post that handing that money, you are then earning it. So that's why, like, it's not that I have issues with housewives. It's just that I think that women who choose to be in that position need to understand how privileged they are. Like again, this is something that definitely they would not be able. Like 99% of people, 99% of women definitely did not have for vast majority of human history. People need to understand that they did not. I mean, they did not have that. This is not the default. Okay, women worked. So, anyways, I'm gonna post a few links down there because I'm just too lazy to copy and paste stuff and having to edit videos. I don't have a lot of time. But my point is that no, you don't have to be like my mother who works full-time as an engineer, no less, and raising me. You don't have to, or any of her sisters or sister-in-law. You don't have to be like me who's driving a PhD. And by the way, a lot of times, like I just, people say like millennial women or women of this generation is so spoiled. I really just feel like I see Western women, they're so spoiled, and I feel like maybe it's because they're raised by spoiled, entitled baby boomers who didn't have to work. Maybe that's why they're spoiled. Because like even the Chinese women I saw that got brainwashed, because most of them live in the East Coast, West Coast, very blue states, right? And they go to very prestigious colleges. Even those women who get brainwashed by lefty mentality, even they are nowhere near as spoiled as an average Western woman. And I really honestly think it's because they have the model of a working mother, of a struggling mother. Like when you struggle, when the women for the longest time all throughout human history struggled alongside men to have to work, they then have that empathy. They have true empathy, true sympathy, and they know how to cooperate with men. I this is just my opinion. Okay, I don't have science to back this up or anything, but this is really from what I've seen. That when they have a model of a mother who's working, and remember, she doesn't have to work when she's she's raising the child in those critical years. But again, the child's gonna grow up. Okay, the child is going to eventually leave the house, and it's still good for a woman to work something on the side to build up her resume. She doesn't have to work full time like my mother did. That was just crazy. I mean, my mother is just kind of like a machine. But at the same time, though, eventually her kids are going to be out of the house and she's going to be left with nothing. And a lot of these housewife women, after that time, they just spend all their husband's money buying expensive purses and going on expensive vacations without their husband, by the way, because their husband has to work. That's not good for men, really. Like, I know that during the time when your children are young and they're cute and stuff, and everything is so great, but once that happens, and this is also from what I've seen, like most of the relationship I saw that eventually either just went really really bad or they eventually got into divorce were regarding a working man and a housewife woman, because he's got stupid of her stupidity, her uselessness, and she also got bored because she doesn't have a child in the house. She doesn't have work anymore, basically. I mean, the cooking and cleaning lasts for like what, 20 minutes, right? So she now gets bored, and then so since her husband's income is her only source, she started to like spend it all, and they started having fights and stuff like that because because she's complaining about this and that to her husband. Oh, I'm so bored, you don't ever go on vacation with me anymore, you don't ever go on shopping with me anymore, like, and he just, he still has to work and he gets tired out, right? I mean, this is just, it happens a lot. So really, it's not, I really wouldn't advocate for it. And I really wish people would also stop. I mean, I really think about what you're saying. So anyways, it's really just a perspective. And if you got through this video, hooray. And I'll see you guys next time.